Welcome to the podcast. Today it gives me great pleasure and it's a real honor to have Dr. Neilank Jha with us. Dr. Jha, thank you for taking the time, being here, and looking really forward to hearing about your new ventures and everything that's been going on that's great in your life. Dr. Neilank Jha is the executive chairman and CEO of the NeuraSeed BCI. It's a company led by world-class neurosurgeons who are using cutting-edge brain-computer interface, BCI technology, in the deep brain to provide targeted closing and real-time monitoring for better patient outcomes. Dr. Jha pursued his undergraduate studies at the University of Toronto, completed his medical school training at McMaster University, followed by a 6-year residency in neurosurgery at McMaster University, and subsequently completed a 2-year fellowship at the University of Toronto in complex spinal disorders. That's a lot of education. It's starting to make sense. He is a board-certified neurosurgeon. He is a trained spine surgeon. Dr. Jha also pursued his MBA at the Ivy School of Business and obtained an MSc in behavioral economics from the London School of Economics. Dr. Jha is a world-renowned neurosurgeon in the field of traumatic brain injury, has worked with various professional sports leagues, is a leading expert on concussions, has worked with professional athletes, professional leagues, and it's a real honor to have you here today. Thanks for taking the time.
Really a privilege to be here, Corey. But after all that, I'm just a guy who loses to you on the golf course.
You're too modest, my friend, too modest. Before we get started, I always like to present everyone with a gift. Really appreciate you doing the podcast. Here's a gift that I wanted to give you. This, my friend, is Augusta in 1934.
Oh, wow.
It's a great picture. And
unbelievable.
You can unwrap that and enjoy that.
Thank
I know
you.
You're a huge golf enthusiast, and
I'm actually a huge Augusta fan.
Yeah.
I had the chance to be there for all 4 days in 2016, and I have never seen a business better run than Augusta.
yeah, it's fabulous. Did you get your little chair and set it up? And
I did. I sat on the 18th hole for part of it, one of the days, and every pro was basically landing the ball within a beach towel of each other. We just don't realize how great these players are, and it's unbelievable the level of excellence. I mean, just looking at Bryson DeChambeau and what happened with Rory McIlroy, what a interesting game. It's so many. I find golf to be so spiritual.
I'm in total agreement. And that, I mean, no better place to be, like walking the grass. It really doesn't do it justice until you're actually there. When you see it and you walk the course, the elevation and the undulations are incredible. I remember walking up 18. It's like a shoot.
Well, I remember when I just got there, the first hole, walking up the first hole, you can't appreciate on TV, like you said, the level of elevation that's there. So it's a magical place.
Amazing. And you're up to some magical things yourself. You are involved with this new company, NeuraSeed BCI. Tell me a little bit about it.
Well, that particular venture is to address lethal brain cancer. And there's a type of condition called a glioblastoma, which is a grade 4 tumor. And despite our best efforts with chemo, radiation, and surgery, survival is only 14 months. And it affects everybody across the board, whether you're the tragically hip, Senator John McCain, Beau Biden, all across the board. So when I was a resident, the first patient I ever saw, Corey, was a 40-year-old gentleman with 3 kids who came into the emerge. I was on my first day of call as a resident, and he came in with a severe headache, and they called me. So I ordered a CAT scan. There was a lesion, then ordered an MRI, and ultimately the gentleman had a glioblastoma. We resected it, administered chemo, radiation, and he passed away in 9 months. And that really hits every neurosurgeon hard. It's interesting because, people would think that neurosurgeons, the kind of idea that one could be arrogant, but I find that difficult to think, how could we be arrogant as neurosurgeons? Because in so many cases, our outcomes are so poor. So this has been a real privilege to work at this company alongside my mentor, Dr. Julian Bales. We have neuro-oncologists and a full team, and we've built a device, a microfluidic pump, dual chamber that can be implanted directly in the brain to bypass the blood-brain barrier that could address the tumors. We're already seeing very favorable results in the animal studies, and we're continuing to progress. And we think that there is tremendous potential to increase survival in these cases. And, I'll leave you with this, Corey. I have 4 kids and 3 boys and my daughter who's 2. And if somebody gave me 90 days more to have breakfast with my daughter every morning, there'd be no better blessing in life. And, that's kind of the way this condition is. 20 years ago, a new chemotherapeutic agent came out, temozolomide. It increased survival by 8 weeks, and it was world news in every neurosurgical center overnight. So that's what we're working on. It's a team effort, and we're really, really hoping that we can have a huge impact on patients and their families.
Yeah, that's incredible. And what a gift to the world if you were able to, to do this and, increasing in one's lifespan and their ability to enjoy, as you said, time with their family, whatever it is they choose to do at that time. That's amazing. You mentioned the involvement of Dr. Julian Bales. I don't know if many people realize that Dr. Bales was, his character was in the movie Concussion, and he's had a huge impact on CTE and how, concussions are and CTE is diagnosed. And tell me about your experiences with him and how it all plays into this particular company and his experience.
Yeah, Dr. Bales was portrayed as Alec Baldwin in the movie Concussion. And when I finished my neurosurgical training, my mom had a concussion. And around the same time, by a series of unexpected events, I actually won a food eating competition that Jack Layton was the chief guest at. And he thought I was a union worker because I'm a little bit on the husky side. And he sat down with me for a couple hours, and my friend said, no, he's a neurosurgeon. I'm like, no, I'm just a fellow. In any case, he asked me if I would become an advisor to him. Now, obviously, as a doctor, I don't have any type of political affiliations. I'm just happy to help anybody who comes through the door. And a few weeks later, he called me, and he asked me if I could cover Crosby in the media when he had his first concussion. And around that time, I was working with another world-famous spine surgeon, and, I ended up covering the Crosby story, and my mother had the concussion, and I looked up who the #1 concussion expert in the world was, and it was Dr. Julian Bales. So my office started calling his office, and for 6 months we reached out. Finally, they said, if Neilank is available next Wednesday at 2:30 p.m., Dr. Bales has half an hour. So obviously I moved around the operating room schedule, the clinic, and raced to go to Chicago to go see him. And it was a surreal experience. He had pictures with the commissioner, and I love sports. So, just seeing the NFL, the NHL, all the stuff that he was involved in. And we ended up talking about his kids for the whole half hour. And such a humble individual, so kind. And at the end of 30 minutes, his executive assistant walked in and said, Dr. Bales, you got a call with the NFL, time to go. And he got up and he shook my hand and he said, Neilank, thank you so much for coming to visit me while you were in Chicago. And I was just so glad to meet him. And I was walking out and he turned to me and said, by the way, what brought you to Chicago? And Corey, I was a little bit embarrassed to say to him that, look, I just came for you. So he goes, did you come just for me? Go wait in my waiting room. And he's 22 years older than me and more became like a father figure. Long story short, I ended up staying at his house for 4 days. And that kind of changed the trajectory of my entire career. And he became a mentor to me. Our families became very close. That just this weekend we golfed with 2 of his sons in Toronto. They were staying with me.
Yeah, wonderful boys. Wonderful, yeah.
Yeah, great kids, right? And just they've been raised so well. And, his kids were coming to my kid's soccer game. And one of his sons now works in my office. So it's come full circle, right? So, that's how I met him. And over the years, he's appointed me to the boards of the sports leagues. And we went to Augusta together, actually, to celebrate one of his friends selling their company. And he was the one who brought me into this venture, and he's the chief medical officer. And he asked me to take a look at the company, and I just came in as an unpaid advisor. And through a series of events, inadvertently, I became executive chairman and CEO 45 days later.
Yeah, absolutely incredible. And it speaks to your skill set. I mean, you don't see too many venture capital guys that are neurosurgeons, and you've got so many different skill sets. It's pretty impressive. Talk to me about your background, like in life. Like, how were you raised? Like, what's made you, so hungry for knowledge and success and excellence? I see the way you do things, the way you conduct yourself on a day-to-day basis. What got you into that? How did that start?
I think it all starts with parents, and I'm so fortunate to have my mother and my father. And, what's interesting is my dad did his PhD and MBA at the University of Alberta. He was a gold medalist, finished his PhD in 2.5 years. And everybody always assumed, oh, my dad is, a genius, which he is, a lot smarter than I'll ever be. However, my mom did her undergrad in genetics, and she's a nurse. But to me, the smartest person in the world is my mom. And I always call my mom every day, and I ask her for advice on all the things I'm doing. And I was born in Edmonton, Alberta. And when I was born, I was actually blue because I had no oxygen. And my mom was scared, so she kind of let me go. And there was a spiritual teacher from India, and he said, name him Neilank, which means blue body. And he said the meaning being like the sky, and he'll have unlimited potential. Now, I didn't obviously turn out to have unlimited potential, but that was the intent. And I grew up playing hockey, absolutely loved hockey all my life. The highlight of my hockey career was winning the SO's Most Improved Player, and my brother taking me to Buy Right, which is kind of like Shoppers Drug Mart, and buying me $10 of OPG stickers. I'll never forget that. So I grew up like that, and then I was in Regina, Saskatchewan, and the only time we ever played video games, which I can age myself, it was the Commodore 64, was if there was a thunderstorm. Otherwise, we were out playing either street hockey, ice hockey, and if not those two, we'd be playing knee hockey in the basement. So that's kind of how I grew up. And then when I was a little kid, people introduced my parents to a spiritual teacher in India, and we went to go visit him. And when I was 10 years old, he asked me to come live with him. And he had about 50 million followers in the world. And my mom thought that this was a ridiculous idea, but my dad thought that this was a real opportunity. So I went there, and it was actually quite interesting because, Corey, when I was in Regina in grade 1, grade 2, I'd have the same routine every morning. I'd wake up, I'd go downstairs in my boxers, I'd lay down at the floor heater. My mom would make me the same breakfast every morning, two sunny side up, peanut butter, jam, 2 pieces of toast, glass of milk, glass of juice. And then I'd come home for lunch, watch the Flintstones, have a sandwich and fries, come back after school, watch Different Strokes and The Cosby Show, and then play hockey all the time. And my parents were so laid back if it was the Stanley Cup playoffs, because remember, we're on the Western Coast. I didn't have to go to school the next morning if the Stanley Cup playoffs were on. I got to watch till 1 a.m. and then just stay home. My parents were very laid back. So I go to India, and the first day I'm in India, I'm sleeping on the concrete floor. We're allowed to have a couple pairs of clothes, and they wake me up at 3:45 in the morning. And I obviously wasn't used to that. My mom used to try to get me to sleep to the last minute. She wasn't really concerned if I was late for school. So I'd wake up at like 8:05. And I used to, for the first couple of weeks, try to hide in different places of the residence. But they'd come pour cold water on me. And the kids were making fun of me because I had a Canadian accent. And academically, when they tested my aptitude, I was at a grade 4 level, even though I was in grade 8 because of the difference in the standard of learning. And I would say, I mean, you know me from the golf course, I'm very quietly competitive. So I started getting up every morning at 3:15, and I volunteered to clean the bathrooms, which I had never done before in my life. And I started studying on my own. And by the time I was in grade 10, I stood number 1 in the entire state in math and sciences, which was like 20, 30 million people. It was really a lot of memorization, nothing that I did that was special. And then by the time I was in grade 12, the same kids that had made fun of me when I came were the ones that elected me as school president. And, the question I often tell the kids when I mentor them, I really love mentoring the students that work with me, as you've seen in the office, is winning is not becoming the school president. Winning is the process of getting there. The enjoyment is in the process. And, it was a famous rapper who once said, on the way to the top is the best time of your life, because once you're there, it's all downhill. So that's a bit about my background. When I lived with the spiritual teacher, just to give you some context to what occurred there, the first day the spiritual teacher saw me, Corey, he said, Neilank, do you know Lord Ganesha, the elephant god? And there's people from every religion there. And I said, yes, Swami. And he said, do you know that the elephant god Ganesha has a mouse at his feet? Yes, Swami. Do you know that when people worship the elephant god, they accidentally worship the mouse? Yes, Swami. He goes, you are a mouse. Don't ever forget that. And throughout my life, Corey, I have that framed in my office, as you know, in multiple places where there's a mouse there with me. And I always remind myself that I'm insignificant. I could get cancer tomorrow. I could get hit by a truck. My existence in the grand scheme of things is not important. But what I do feel is, while we're on this earth, whatever little I can do, whether it's the impact in my children's life, in my staff's life, how we can help patients with this device, but I don't feel any level of importance. Like a guy like me, I'm very fortunate to work with Dr. Bales. I'm very fortunate to bump into people like yourself, the network that you have, the type of people that you interact with, the excellence that you demonstrate in wealth management. So that's basically my upbringing. And my mom always tells me that, Neilank, money should be like blood, and it should circulate in the body, and it should be shared with everybody. So I don't really have a venture capitalist mindset. With my team, I really try to share everything with my team. I like to see other people grow. I live a very simple lifestyle, but at the same time, it's important to be profitable, to be sustainable. So managing overhead expenses. But what I choose to do with my own money, if I want to pay for the honeymoon of my staff with my own money, that's just a personal decision. And I don't believe in watching the pennies when it comes to my own money. Now, when it comes to the corporation's money, that's a different story. But at the same time, I absolutely believe in taking care of the staff, because I don't believe in companies. I believe in people, and I invest in people. Even Julia, who's right here with us today, she could tell you that, for who's believed in you the most?
You.
And she's turned out to be one of our most tremendous staff. And she's a wonderful person, and there was a time that she liked to party till 3, 4 in the morning. Which one of us didn't? And I always knew that she had that burning desire to be more and more and more successful. What time were you in the office until last night?
Around 12:30.
Okay, I'm not condoning this type of activity, because I know it's 2024, but I'm a true believer in hard work.
Yeah,
and I'm a
same.
believer in capitalism. And I believe capitalism results in hard work, innovation. Now, that being said, your mother, your father, your friends, everybody's the priority, not overwork. But when you have an opportunity to do something, you should grab that bull by the horns and go with it.
Absolutely. And it's about creating success for yourself and what you can do for others, as you so well said. And, bringing your best self every day, competing with your best self, getting the best results you can get, and, not being too hard when you can't, but just, getting back up at bat again and trying to create that level of success for yourself and others to share it. I mean, that's why I love success, is because I get to share it with people. I get to share experiences. Like, a lot of people collect different things, and I'm a collector too, of memorabilia and lots of different things, cars, watches, etc. But what I love collecting the most are experiences, because those experiences, they add up and they mean something. They're much more meaningful.
Well, didn't you take your son to the Super Bowl? And then on top of that, you also were at the Stanley Cup Finals, right?
Didn't take him to the Super Bowl. I was at the Super Bowl, but not with my son. But I did just get to take my son to the Stanley Cup, and what a
and you
what a
interacted
great
with
experience.
Gretzky. You had an interaction with Gretzky, right?
I did. I've met him a couple of times before, but a really cool story. So we're at the game, and I'm wearing a Gretzky jersey. We're at the Edmonton, Florida Panthers Stanley Cup game, and someone sees me wearing a Gretzky jersey. So he points behind, and he goes, "Hey, Wayne's right up there." So I look up. My son's like, "Wayne's up there. I want to meet him. So we turn around. We finally see him. He waves to us. So we wave back. I stand up and I show him, "Hey, look at my jersey." And I go, "number 1." So then he looks at it, he goes, like he shows me a signature. So I'm like how? He's like, come on up. So we walk up to the top row in the section. He's in the box suite sitting over the top row of the section. He tells security to grab the jersey, signs it, gives it back to security, gives it back to me. So he signed my jersey. He is just the most down-to-earth, authentic human being of an athlete I've ever met. I mean, his idol was like that too. His idol was Gordie Howe, and he was just like that. His dad did an incredible job, Walter, raising him and his mom.
You know what I find, Corey, that the people that are extremely successful are like that. They make themselves accessible. They're humble. I mean, you know, I watch you on LinkedIn and I see the work you do. You make sure you respond to absolutely everybody who writes to you. You comment favorably on what people are saying. And I think that's a general pattern you see with successful people. I remember when we were golfing the other day, you told me a story about how they asked your son who his hero was. And what did he say?
He said, my dad.
So what do you think that you've done that when he responded, you were his hero?
I put everything into my kids. You know, I'm always there. I show up. I care deeply about my kids. We've gone through some struggles. He's had some personal struggles in life, and I make sure that I'm there every step of the way for him. And I reinforce that he can get through anything, you know, that he can get through anything, as long as he's willing to put the work in. And, you know, it's life's not about what happens. It's how you respond to what happens to you.
Yeah. Do you
right?
remember,
It's all about resilience.
do you remember the other day when you were saying to me, I think this was a few weeks ago, you had a match at the National and we were golfing together. And I left on the 7th hole and I said, hey, I won't come back and bother you guys. You're like, no, come back. And I joined you back on the 12th hole because I went to my son's soccer game, who's 5. He's a great soccer player. And we have soccer 5 days a week because we got 3 boys, right? So he said to me at 6 in the morning, you're not even coming to my soccer today because you're going golfing. And I said, no, I'll be there. So I think it's so important just to, you know, people, you know, one of the things I say to people, Corey, is people write to me and students will write to me and they'll call me and I make time for absolutely everybody. And they'll say, well, Neilank, you're so busy. I say, actually, I have all the time in the world because everybody thinks I'm so busy, so nobody talks to me. So and one of the things that Dr. Bales and I talk about often is we take every email, every call, every inquiry, because you don't know what's behind that inquiry. That could be the one.
Absolutely. And it's a mindset, right? You're a student of the game, and you just day in and day out, you bring your best stuff. It's like, you know, Michael Jordan, you know, I worked a lot with his trainer. Like he was a friend of mine and a personal coach. And you know, what Michael Jordan worked on constantly was the chest pass. I mean, here's the greatest player in the NBA that's ever played the game. I'm working every day on the chest pass because he's like, when I know that there's chaos or things going on around me and things I can't control, I know that I got this and I can always pass it. So the best of the best, they practice the fundamentals day in and day out. It's not, you know, one day I feel like this, I'll do this. One day, no, it's you show up every day. You show up ready to do what you need to do. You're focused. You know what you want, and you bring that every day. It's great, and it's a great example for your children.
Yeah, and I think
well.
Tiger said that a few weeks ago that he has 1,000 touch points a day, whether it's putting, chipping, hitting balls, which is just unbelievable. It's not by accident that guys like him are who they are, right? I mean, you know, I often say to people that Tiger's had 5 spine operations, 5 knee operations, multiple ankle operations. And even at that point when he had 10 operations, he won the Masters in 2019 at Augusta. And I can tell you from my experience that if any one of my patients had even 1 operation, it'd be difficult to win their club championship. So I don't think we sometimes appreciate the greatness of some of these individuals, and there's so much to learn from all of these people.
Absolutely. I mean, it was incredible. I was actually at that Masters that he won in 2019. Wow. And yeah, I had woken up on a Tuesday, and I just, you know, when you just get a bug and I'm like, I haven't gone to the Masters. I'm going to the Masters. I went by myself. Like I literally got up. I secured the tickets. I booked the flights. I did everything on the Tuesday. I left. I got there Tuesday night for the practice round Wednesday. And as you know how it works, right? You get your chair. But Tiger was only going to play 9. So he teed off on 1. And I saw that he just teed off, but I looked at the 9th hole and no one was there. So I brought my chair right away. I ran over there. I set up my chair in the first row on the 9th hole. And sure enough, Tiger comes around. He was with Justin Thomas and an Asian kid, real tall guy, Hao Tong Lee.
Yeah.
And sure enough, Tiger pushes the ball. He's just off the green and about a few feet in front of me. Obviously, he gets up and down and no problem. But yeah, you can learn a lot from Tiger. And you know, one of the greatest things with Tiger is I loved what he did. He brought his son to the U.S. Open this week. So he brought his son. He said, my son knows my game more than anyone. And, you know, his son's now helping him with his golf swing. So he says, why not? My son knows my swing better than anyone. So that's such a special time that they can share together. And
you can see how much time he spends with his son because the mannerisms of Charlie are so similar to Tiger, where he puts his glove in his pocket, the way he adjusts his shirt. So it's an amazing thing to see. And I think one of the things in this world is that we can learn things from everybody. And, you know, the type of mindset I have is to focus on the positives that everybody has and leverage people's strengths to move ahead. And my motto in life has always been to get ahead, not to get even. Because the satisfaction is everybody moving ahead collaboratively together. And when you're restructuring companies, that's actually a big thing. That's my area of work, is restructuring and insolvency. And a lot of times people are so focused on pursuing things that occurred historically. And I often say to people, what is your purpose here? To save the company or to pursue the bad actors? Now, if pursuing the bad actors is part of the grander plan of advancing the company, that's okay. But you have to keep your eye on the prize. The goal is to make the company successful. So if you have a limited amount of resources, are you going to spend those resources on a lawyer to pursue somebody, or are you going to use those limited resources to drive revenue to keep the company alive? And I think that's such an important principle in life, is to focus on the positives, leverage the strengths, and not lose sight of where your focus is.
Yeah, 100%. Because, you know, when you get caught up in these things like vendettas, revenge, the rest of it, no one wins. It's just a waste of energy, focus, time, all of it. Whereas you're focusing on the end result. Like, what's the end result? To make this company profitable, to make it, you know, sustainable, to help other people, right? Because
that's exactly it.
Yeah, it's a great mindset to have.
That's exactly it, you know. And if you keep your eye on the prize in anything, you know, like take even, for example, golf. The way I look at golf is you've got the long game, the middle game, and the short game. Now, I mean, those of us who golf a lot, you know that rarely do you ever show up with all three on the same day. And I compare the long game, the middle game, and the short game to relationships, wealth, you know, and basically your career. And never do you have all three firing at the same time, you know, meaning like when I say your wealth, I mean your health, really. Your health is your wealth. So your health, your career, and your relationships are like the mid game, long game, and short game. And if you have any two out of the three firing at any given time, you're probably having a good day on the golf course.
Absolutely. Those are the fundamentals of success for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what got you into, I mean, here you are, you're a neurosurgeon. Then you decide to go into, you get your MBA, and then you study behavioral economics from the London School of Economics. What had you take that path? I mean, you're like have this insatiable appetite for succeeding in knowledge and, you know, being well versed in several different areas. What had you do that?
Well, you know, Corey, I would first go back and say I don't think the degrees mean very much. You know, whether it's an MBA or the London School of Economics. I mean, we can both say this from our own golf course. Some of the smartest people we've ever met have a grade 3 education.
Yeah.
So I think for me, the difference was that when you're a doctor, it's very difficult for people to see you in any other light. So, you know, the benefit of going to the London School of Economics is often I'll be in a boardroom and somebody will say, well, Dr. Jha, let's explain to you what a valuation is or what a convertible note is or what a say. And I'm happy to listen. And then invariably somebody say, oh, he went to the London School of Economics. I'm like, oh, that doesn't mean anything. I'm happy to listen to you, what you want to teach me. But I do think that if you want to engage in research and development, advanced science, it doesn't just happen in a laboratory. Okay, and I'll give you a small example. There's a story about the Cleveland Clinic, and we all know that the Cleveland Clinic is a world-renowned clinic, but at one point it was at the bottom of the barrel. And a new CEO came in, and he basically took the 40,000 staff members and handed everybody a badge that said, I'm a caregiver. And who do you think are the people that revolted to that badge? It was the medical doctors and the PhD researchers. And they said, well, how can everybody be a caregiver? We're the caregivers. And the CEO said, that's not true. If you don't have the nurses, if you don't have the support workers, if you don't have the custodial staff, if you don't have the cafeteria staff, there's nothing we can do here. And that's something my parents taught me from a very young age. One thing that my mom and dad would say to me is that, Neilank, if the people who collect the garbage go on strike, look at Manhattan. You can't even operate the city if the people go on strike. Every single person is important. And when they drove that culture at the Cleveland Clinic, it went from bottom of the barrel to top service in the world because everybody had purpose. And I basically developed some skills, probably the hard way in real life, not in the classroom, but learning about the importance of research and development, methodology, statistical analysis, analytics, regression, artificial intelligence, machine learning, but also balancing that with understanding the science, and then also understanding the corporate structure, corporate governance, capital structure, shareholder structure. And when you kind of look at all of those things, so small example, we were on an investor call last night. And one of the investors said, well, Dr. Jha, what do you think is the risk of this not working? And I said, look, I think it's like a coin toss. I think we're in game 7. And I think anything can happen. It's 50-50. And then I turned over to our neuro-oncologist and I said, what do you think the likelihood of this translating to human models? And he said, well, I think it's close to 100%. And the investor said, well, Dr. Jha, are you just saying a coin toss because you're overly conservative? And I said, well, you have to understand where I sit. I'm thinking about the regulatory risk. I'm thinking about the capital risk. I'm thinking about the scientific risk. And all of the risks are being factored in when I'm letting you know that this is no slam dunk. So if you want to invest in this company, be prepared to lose your investment. Now, if the investment works, you might make a 40, 50, 60x return. But you should only consider this as an alternative investment because it's biotech and be prepared to lose what you invest. It should not be part of your net worth that is critical to your future success. So that type of comment comes from a multidisciplinary approach of understanding all the different aspects. Now, you know what I find, Corey, is that people would think, oh, well, if you make that comment, people are never going to invest. I actually don't find that to be the case at all. I find that when you're completely honest with people, completely transparent with people, you actually, when you do due diligence, you let them know up front, these are what the shortcomings are, these are what I perceive to be the risks. I mean, Julia can tell you, not based on me, based on the team and all the wonderful work that everybody did. I mean, we were able to raise $1 million in maybe half an hour yesterday from a small group of retail investors. So I think that's why understanding these different facets is really important. And when you come into a company and you understand where the touch points are, what you need to restructure, what you need to reposition, it really does take a multidisciplinary background. And my philosophy when I do this is, a lot of people allow the lawyers and the accountants and the auditors to drive the business. I'll give you a very small example. One of the companies, when I entered, they were spending 9 months back and forth between 2 expensive law firms, a Manhattan law firm and a Chicago law firm, trying to negotiate an intellectual property agreement with an academic center. And for 9 months, they weren't getting anywhere. So I entered this particular company as an unpaid advisor. And I said, okay, I called the partner at the firm and I said, why don't you fly with me to the university? I want to sit down with the 7 lawyers. And, well, Dr. Jha, we've been doing this for 9 months. This is the best deal we're going to get. They want 3% top line revenue for the IP. They want to own the IP, the academic center, and they want to have commercialization rights. And I said, well, let's just go fly down and see them. So one thing, Corey, that I'm a big believer in is that these days people are on Zoom all the time and they're wearing track pants. And I always think sometimes it's good to be different, like your license plate, different one. So nowadays, I wear suits all the time with pocket square, and I jump on planes all the time. And I think that's an arbitrage opportunity. So I fly.
I agree.
Yeah. So I fly out there, and they're shocked to see me. In fact, they're hugging me. Okay. And I said, look, guys, I really just think you should give us the intellectual property. That's how I started the meeting. Oh, Dr. Jha, this is a complicated issue. The university policy is that we need to own the IP. I said, I understand that, but this particular medical condition is an orphan condition. And how am I going to be able to go out to investors and raise capital if you own the IP? Well, Dr. Jha, what do you think that maybe we should do joint IP? I said, well, look, the problem with joint IP is that you'll license it out to your friends. Our firm will license it out to their friends. Our firm will sue your friends. Your firm will sue our friends. This is just not going to work. Now, Corey, those are really simple language that I'm using, but those are really, really important legal principles about understanding the nuances of joint IP. So I was up till 5 a.m. reading a number of articles on exactly this, about the risks of joint IP, case precedent, etc. Anyways, they moved on to the next topic of 3% top line revenue. They said, well, Dr. Jha, this is just standard. And I said, well, it's standard because hardly ever does anything ever get commercialized. 3% top line revenue means that if we do $1 billion in sales and our net income is 90 million, you just took 33% of our profit margin. I can't go in good conscience and ask people to invest. Well, what do you suggest, Dr. Jha? Well, I suggest that you take your consulting fees and then you give us a reasonable buyout at the $5 million mark. We do like the Lehman formula. We'll give you 3% for the first million, 2.5% for the second million, 2% for the third. So that'll be $100,000 for $5 million plus the consulting fees and then a small buyout fee. And then they said, what about commercialization, Dr. Jha? I said, commercialization? I said, first of all, we should be running an RFP and look at 3 different places to make sure that the company's getting the best deal. And the professor jumps in with the 7 lawyers and said, we're not even capable of commercializing. We can just do 50 prototypes. So the lawyer said, okay, we'll give you commercialization. And the lead lawyer says, can we just take a 2-minute recess? I want to talk to my team for a second. So we take a recess, and the lawyer who came with me, credit to him, he never spoke in the entire meeting because he knew that I was making progress. They come back after 2 minutes and said, Dr. Jha, we have a counter offer for you. I said, sure, I'm always happy to listen to any offer. We're going to do something we've never done before. We're going to give you the IP. Second of all, we're going to give you the commercialization rights because we've just learned from the professor here that we don't have the ability to do that. And instead of doing a buyout after 5 million at 1.5 million is what you calculated, would you agree to 1.8 million? Just a token number, right? I said, of course I'll agree to that. And then that lawyer who flew with me jumped in, Corey, and said, my flight's not for 3 hours. Do you have an empty office? I'll redraft this right now. We signed the agreement on the spot, and that changed the trajectory of that company. So the reason I tell that small story is that story combines an understanding of the science, because I explained to them the medical condition, the orphan nature, understanding of commercialization, IP, corporate finance, and putting all of those together, and also emotional intelligence of understanding what their touch points were, demonstrating the respect to them, flying out, dressing appropriately. And there was a lot of other elements in that meeting. But to answer your question, that's the reason why I think that the multidisciplinary approach is important. And I'm not an academic. I mean, you've associated with me. You know, I'm just a regular guy. You know, I mean, a lot of times when I go to buy things, Corey, like if I go to buy a car or go to buy a house, people really don't even give me the time of day. You know, when I went to buy the house that we live in, they said to me that, sir, do you know that this house costs like maybe a little bit beyond your means? And I'm always in my shorts and t-shirt. I said, no, that's fine. But would you mind just showing it to me? And, you know, I don't ever get offended when people say that to me. You know why I don't get offended, Corey? Whenever people judge people or they underestimate people. And, you and I have talked about this on the golf course. We both love to be underdogs. The reason why I tell my staff and my students that you should be grateful that there's a lot of people like that in the world. And they'll be like, why? Why are you saying that? Aren't you offended by them saying that? Absolutely not. Because if there weren't people like that conducting themselves like that, then you probably wouldn't have the opportunity you have.
Exactly. It's like fuel. It's fuel inside, but
Yeah.
it's you deal with it so well. I mean, I've had it as well. I've been certain athletes are like that too. Like Dwayne Wade was always underestimated his whole career, and it's you can if you use it as fuel, it can really motivate you and to show what you're capable of in certain situations.
Look at Dwayne Wade. He was underestimated his career, but where did LeBron and Chris Bosh go to? They went to Dwayne Wade. Right?
Exactly.
So
who was known as the captain of that team, even with LeBron and
LeBron
Bosh there. That's right.
And another great.
But even in the Olympics, right? Like he was the guy that played the best in the Olympics.
And as much as we love Wayne Gretzky, look at the example of Mark Messier. The thing people forget about Messier is, I'll tell you. Can I tell you a funny story about Messier?
Sure, please do.
So, I was born in Edmonton. I'm a huge Messier fan. Okay, like just a leader in sports, everything. So this is a story also about Julian Bales, okay? So we had to do an event with Performance Sports Group Bauer, and Dr. Bales and I were two of the consultants, and they asked Dr. Bales to moderate the event. Now, Dr. Bales knows I love hockey, and he knew I loved Messier, so he turned to the CEO and president of Performance Sports Group at the time, many years ago, and said, actually, Dr. Jha is going to be moderating this event. So I said, no. And he's like, no, you'll be... all my life, I've been the guy who's kind of been the mouse, but then people kind of push you to the front. So I had to introduce Mark Messier, which was like a great honor, okay? Like just a huge honor. So there was 5 of us on stage, 4 of us were neurosurgeons, and Mark Messier. So you know how I started the introduction, Corey? I said, we have a really elite group of people on stage today. Between the 5 of us, we have 6 Stanley Cups.
That's fantastic.
And Mark Messier started laughing so hard. And, I think the thing people forget is he won 4 cups in Edmonton with Gretzky, 1 cup in Edmonton without Gretzky, and then 1 cup in New York.
With the Rangers, yeah.
Okay, and people forget that.
Yeah.
So I'll tell you the final part. Messier and I got along great, and, I looked up to him so much. And then later that evening, I got a text message from his sister. And I didn't even know how she got my number. And I called her, and she said, I really want to thank you, Dr. Jha. And I said, what did I do? And she said, Mark Messier was so nervous to get on stage with 4 neurosurgeons because he didn't even finish high school, and you made him feel so comfortable. And I said, are you joking? I said, we're a dime a dozen, relatively speaking. I go, he is, if not the greatest, one of the greatest leaders in sports in the world. I couldn't sleep all night. I was so nervous. So, it's interesting perception, how different perception is.
For sure. Perspective and perceptions. Absolutely. I love the story. I was reading this, and I was reading something that was really interesting about Bill Gates. And what he said is that when he is looking to solve a very complex problem, he looks for the laziest person that he knows. And I'm thinking to myself, why would that be, right? So he says, and he writes in the article, because the lazy person has figured out the easy way to do things. So everybody, and I always say this, you could show me someone that's a champion in one area, and I'll show you where they can be a disaster in another. But you show me someone who's a disaster in one area, and I'll show you where they could be a champion in another. Because there's different aspects and parts to life. So it's, I think everybody's got a skill set that's unique, and, they could be the best or one of the best in the world at doing it. I think each individual has something special and unique to them. But the thing that I also think is that people are so busy trying to get rid of the things that make them great because of society and how society looks at it, that they miss it.
Yeah,
they miss that opportunity.
I fully agree with you. When I'm putting a management team together and I'm looking for a CFO and a chief operating officer, a lot of times I'll bring in certain people and some of my staff will say, but Neilank, the way that this person talks to you, like, they just don't have that emotional intelligence. Or the way this person does this is like this. And I say, look at Phil Jackson. What was his brilliance? His brilliance was managing the egos
For sure.
of Michael Jordan, of
Allowing people to be who they are.
Dennis Rodman. He allowed him, remember from The Last Dance, he allowed him to go to Vegas.
Exactly. Allowing people to be who they are.
Right? And we see that.
One of the greatest leaders of all time.
And you know what? He gave different concessions to different people. So if I think that this chief financial officer can do the absolute right job for the company, and I just have to take a little bit of heat how I deal with that person, or a chief operating officer, and if that's in the best interest of the corporation, that's what you do. And one of the things my spiritual teacher used to always say to me, Corey, he said, Neilank, what do you want? And everybody says the same thing. I want happiness. And he said, think about what you just said, Neilank. I want happiness. I is ego. It's never I, Neilank. You're a nobody. What did you do? It's the team that did it. Remove the I, which is ego. What is want, Neilank? What is want? Want is desire. Remove your ego, remove your desire, and what are you left with? Happiness. I want happiness. So the whole idea was head in the forest, hands in society. We lived with 2 pairs of clothes. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with driving a Range Rover or having a nice watch, but we shouldn't be attached to it. If we have it, great. If we don't, no problem. People will say to me, Neilank, do you fly in business class or first class? And I say, no. I fly in economy class, and I lived in India with 2 pairs of clothes, and I'd be happy to do standing room if I need to. Now, I will say that, if I have to go to Dubai and come back in 48 hours, I will sometimes do off my credit card points business class. That's more for the business sake because I have to be fresh, get back, and more so because if I have to see some patients or do something. But, I think that idea of ego and desire holds us back. And that's something I work on every single day because every one of us has ego. Every one of us
Definitely,
has that.
definitely. And you need it. You need ego to succeed because to take on the things that you're doing, you have to have an ego. But the key is to control it so
Yes.
it doesn't control you, right? It's there and it could be your best friend, but it could also be your worst enemy if it's uncontrolled.
Yes.
So I think the key is, I talk to people a lot and I say, well, I spent the first half of my life building up this ego to be able to, approach, really high net worth clients, prospective clients, do some of the things that I do. Like you have to have that ego there and a belief in yourself. But then there's also, the second half of my life is really controlling it so it doesn't control you. And I think that's what, I surround myself with a lot of older people. You are wise beyond your years, definitely. But that's something older people really have down. They've controlled their ego. They're really good at controlling it. And I think it's something that's important, a huge factor for success because you can get in your own way. You can be too egotistical, and you can also, not enjoy your success or the things that are important to you, right? Like what are the truly most important things in this world? None of them are material. They're all things that money can't buy. Your family, good friends, your children, good health.
Well,
love, a spouse that you love. Like these are things that are, money can't buy these things. So those are the things that really matter at the end of the day.
Yeah, I fully agree. I was giving a talk at one of the Ivy League universities recently, and it was a private session, and one of the students asked me, oh, Neilank, you're running these companies, you're doing X, you're doing Y, you're doing Z, and you have 4 kids, and your better half's at home taking care of these 4 kids. Don't you think that's unfair? That was the premise of the question. And I said, well, first of all, she wanted to have that many kids. And I'm grateful we did now that they're there. And she loves the kids. But I said, maybe the premise of your question is a little bit faulty. And they said, well, what do you mean? And I said, you're assuming that I value the business and value the work I do out there more than I value the work that she's doing over there. But if you ask me a personal question, the greatest asset that me and her have, and our life is a shared experience of these kids, the greatest asset we have is those 4 kids. And she is managing the most valuable asset that we have. So maybe could you look at it differently, that how fortunate is she that she gets this precious opportunity to nurture our greatest assets, and I'm just going out there trying to provide a few resources to allow her to better nurture these assets. So it's just the way you perceive things, right? And I think the world has changed so much where people are in many ways judgmental, there's cancel culture, and it's the point that you made, right? That we have to find the good in others and leverage that good as opposed to looking for the bad and then moving in that direction. And I think the reason I've had a little bit of success in life is not because of me, is because I've become very good at identifying talent in others. And I know all the weaknesses I have, which the list is extremely long. And I know how to plug those gaps by surrounding myself with the people that can fill in those gaps.
Yeah, it takes a lot of intent. There's brilliance and then there's intelligence, and you have both. So it's
I wouldn't.
It's,
thank you, but I wouldn't go that far.
yeah, yeah, for sure. No, it's key factor in success is surrounding yourself with the right individuals, and you've certainly done that really well.
Well, look at Tom Brady. Tom Brady, as you and I have discussed previously, took a pay cut so that he could surround himself with better players, right? He wins 7 Super Bowls, arguably the greatest football player of all time, was a 6th round, 199th draft, had the ego, the good, healthy ego to tell Kraft that I'm the best decision the franchise has ever made. But let's just take a step back here for a second. From an economics perspective, he now signs a 10-year, $375 million contract with Fox News to be a correspondent. Actually, by giving up a little bit of salary each year to make sure everybody around him was taken care of, he built a legacy, which you can't measure in dollars, of winning 7 Super Bowls. But ultimately, he's going to end up making more money than any football player of all time, even though he was the guy that sacrificed the money.
Yeah. My mentor, Tim Grover, always talks about this. He worked with Michael Jordan for 15 years, Kobe Bryant for, his whole career, Dwayne Wade, so many others. And he always says this. He's like, you want your brand to be good? Win. Winning creates the brand. You'll never have an issue with brand if you win. If you find ways to win and create success in your own life, the brand will take care of itself, the branding. And that's exactly what Tommy does. He's, I think we talked about this story, when he was with Michigan. He gets drafted by Michigan. He's frustrated. He's not getting any playing time. He's got 1 rep. So he goes in to see the quarterback coach. He goes, look, I'm thinking of transferring out. I can't get on the field. It's like I've got no chance. So coach tells him, how many reps you got right now? He goes, I got 1 rep, coach, 1 rep. So coach goes, great. You better make that the best rep of your life. Go work on that 1 rep. So he goes, okay. He thinks about it. He decides he's going to stay. So he works on the 1 rep. He makes sure the 1 rep is amazing. Yeah. The time Lloyd Carr is the head coach. So Lloyd Carr sees us. He gives him 2 reps. Then it becomes 4 reps, 6 reps, 8 reps, 12, 14. Then he's starting. It was the same thing. When Belichick drafted him, it was the same thing. He goes, he goes, listen, kid, you're here to create competition for 3rd string. He wasn't even a 2nd string. You're here to create competition for the 3rd string. 199th draft pick gets passed over 10 times by every NFL team. His opportunity came, and we know what happened.
Well,
we know what happened because some people get better and better and better as time goes on. Where you see them as a representation of how they are at that particular moment, they're not finished because they're always competing. They're always trying to get better day in and day out. So you don't know when that time is going to be that their moment comes, and then they seize that opportunity.
Well, we just talked about this.
Yeah.
I mean, Drew Bledsoe goes down, and it's Nick Saban would always say this, and I'd hear Nick Saban saying this, next man up. And Tom Brady gets his opportunity, and then he never comes out of there, right? And I think that's just the winning mindset, right? He believed in himself, and he got the opportunity, and the rest is history. And I'm also a big fan of Belichick, but at the same time, one thing you got to give credit for Tom Brady, just like Mark Messier, he goes to the Buccaneers and he wins a Super Bowl over there as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Belichick really struggled after Brady left. So, and Brady never said anything inappropriate in the media. He was always complimentary. I mean, just a world-class person. Look at Tiger Woods. When he did that press conference after he had some challenges in his personal life, and remember, sponsors were letting him go. And it's to your point what you just said. You know what brought everything back was winning. Winning brought everything back, because when he won that Masters in 2019, now he's getting the Congressional Medal, Presidential Medal. He just won the award the other day for a lifetime of, quality service in the PGA. Who would have thought over a decade ago when he did that press conference that look what would happen to his career, where he become the ambassador of the entire golf league. So I think we can't judge people at that moment. Like you said, we're all learning continuously. We're getting better. We have to give people second and third chances.
Definitely.
And that's how we find the best talent.
Yeah, definitely. Because you're going to fail along the way. That's just part of the process. It's like, before anyone won, they first failed. Think about it. Think about anyone that's ever won anything big. Before that, they failed. So it's just part of the process. And it doesn't have to be, you had mentioned it's all the way in which you interpret things. It's not what happens, it's how you interpret it. So you could interpret it as, look, I don't fail. I either win or I learn. But both for me are a win. Those aren't failures. So I may not have got the result I wanted to get, but I learned something. And the next time that comes up again, I'll be poised and I'll be ready to take advantage.
Look at LeBron James.
So isn't that winning?
100%. Look at LeBron James.
You're getting better in life. You're doing the things that it takes to get the results that you want.
LeBron James, he kept coming in second, losing in the finals. And what were the commentators saying? Oh, LeBron choked in the finals. Okay, is that really the right way to look at it? Or do you look at it that he went to a small market, didn't really have a lot of players around him, and nobody else would have been able to take that team year after year after year to the finals again and again and again? So, it's very rare that second's not good. I mean, when Tiger met Curtis Strange, and Curtis Strange said to Tiger, what do you want to do? And Tiger said, I'm going to win. And Curtis Strange said, well, coming in second is going to be good on the PGA Tour. You may not realize that. And Tiger said, my dad said second sucks and third's even worse. And Curtis Strange turned to him and said, you will learn. And Tiger, just think about this. This video is amazing.
He never learned.
But he's such a young kid, and he turns to Curtis Strange and he says, winning is in my nature. And I think that the world has changed a lot, where people now think that winning is not a good thing. Like, I watch kids soccer, they don't even keep score anymore. Listen, that's not the real world, okay? What I say to people is do your very, very best until the end and try your best to win. But if you lose, look the other person in the eye, shake their hand and say, great game. Because just as important as winning is learning how to lose gracefully.
I agree completely.
And instead of teaching kids that right now, what they're teaching them is winning's not important. Don't count how many goals you score. Winning is important.
Of course it's important. Winning is everything. And this is why I do this podcast. I do this podcast because my contribution back to society is I want to show people how to win. That's what I love to do. I love to show young people and successful people and anybody who wants to learn, because right now there is a gravitational pull to be average, mediocre, or even below. And that's not taking the time that you have on this planet, in my opinion. I'm not saying I'm right, but from my perspective, I believe it is. And using, the time that you have to impact the world as much as you can. And my guests represent that, just like yourself, and this is my contribution to the world to give back. And it's okay to win. Winning is great.
Yeah, winning is great, and learning to lose gracefully is important too.
For sure.
So, and
it's part of the process, right? I had a friend of mine, a very, very successful entrepreneur, and he would tell me, he'd say, before you win, you have to know how to lose right. Before you can win, you have to know how to lose properly. And that's part of, as we said, the process along the way.
And Rory McIlroy, people have been giving him a hard time the past couple days because he left 10 minutes after his round, didn't speak to the media. I have a different take on that. I think that, he recently had this challenge in his personal life where he was getting divorced, didn't get divorced, then he misses these 2 putts. I mean, statistically, the chance of a player at his level missing those 2 putts is 1 in 1,500. And I actually think he did a smart thing by walking away and not speaking to the media. Because, one of the things my spiritual teacher used to say to me was, Neilank, slip while walking and the injury can be repaired. Slip while talking and the injury can never be repaired. And it's better that he took heat for one day of walking away, but then he released a beautiful statement complimenting Bryson, complimenting the game. And sometimes you need to know when it's okay to remove yourself and take some heat. And I think that, he really is a true champion. He demonstrated grace in losing just in that moment, And I actually think it's not fair when they interview these athletes immediately after losing because the adrenaline is running so high and they say things that may not be how they want them to come out.
Yeah, it's not a fair representation. Yeah, it's interesting. I've looked at it from a lot of different perspectives. I think with Rory in particular, I think that he's applied some extra pressure to himself that he didn't really need to, like in terms of, getting involved in different, opinions about the Live Golf League and different things like that. Unfortunately, the stuff came out about his personal life, and that's always a difficult thing to deal with. But when you're dealing with, the golf course itself, then you're dealing with, things that you've said, opinions you've given. It's just like an extra added pressure, right? Because there's so much pressure of performing in the moment.
Yeah,
it's when you add stuff on top of that, it could be overwhelming.
I fully agree with you. Yeah. I mean, even if you look at this from a business perspective, the Live Golf issue, whether you like Live, you don't like Live, the reality is that the way the PGA Tour operated is not like other professional sports leagues. Other professional sports leagues, the revenue share is like 53%, 54% of the players. Now, you go to Augusta, and they're generating $150 million that week. But the prize money, as we know, is maybe $20 million. Now, actually, it was only 12.5.
And who puts on the show? Like who's getting all the sponsors, right?
The players do.
Exactly. So all the money gets derived from the players.
So, another group of people realized that there was an opportunity here. They created some competition, and it's actually made the PGA Tour better. And you know what I think is the really unfortunate thing in this case? Is that they used Rory as a figurehead to do this, which distracted him from his game. And Rory's a nice guy, and he meant well, and he really did believe, and there's certain things about the PGA Tour that I'm a big fan of. Like, I think it's, if you're fighting to make the cut, you're fighting to make some of those things are good. But Rory got distracted, as you said. He was focusing on this issue, and then they didn't even have the courtesy to let him know that behind the scenes, they were simultaneously potentially working on a deal. So he's been through a lot at a personal level. He sacrificed a lot for the game of golf. And I am confident that the game will give him back some great rewards because he's a great person. He did things with a good heart. And like you said, he got distracted. And when you want to be the absolute best in the world, that bunker shot that DeChambeau made for the up and down from 4 feet, you and I both know that a 50-yard bunker shot is one of the toughest shots in golf. And the fact that he made that up and down is because credit to Bryson, that despite the fact that he had all these people rooting against him because he went to Live, he stayed focused. Look how healthy he looks. Look at how wonderful his personality's become, how much he's matured, signed every autograph for every fan. I mean, he's revolutionized the game with the 3D printer. But at the end of the day, he didn't get distracted. He was practicing those up and downs. He put the reps in. And poor guy Rory was distracted from those reps because he had to deal with all of these other political issues that somebody like him, who's the best in the world, should not have to deal with. So I fully agree with your sentiment. And from a capital perspective, that's what I think happened.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. It's been so wonderful, having this time with you. I always ask this question because it's something I think about a lot. What do you want your legacy to be?
I think the legacy would really be that the young staff like Julie I work with and everybody else, if they can continue to do the work that we're doing, trying to find ways to improve the quality of life and survival of people, and if my children can, in whatever capacity, whatever they choose to do, have the same mindset that do what they love, do what they're passionate about, and help others. And if I can inspire a few people along the way, and I'll leave you with this last thing when you ask me the legacy. I remember the story about the father who came home, and just like my daughter, who's 2, Sophia, he came home to his daughter and she wanted to play with her father. And the father said, "Oh, I'm tired. I just worked." Well, here's a newspaper. He cut out a map of the world. He cut it up into a bunch of pieces and he said, "Go do this puzzle." And in my case, Sophia, she took all the pieces, was excited. And the father said, "Oh, it's going to take her forever to put that world together." And lo and behold, 3 minutes later, she came back and she put the whole world together. And her dad said, "Sophia, how did you do that?" And she said, "Daddy, I flipped over all the pieces and there was the picture of a person. I put the person together and automatically the whole world came together." So that's what my legacy, I would hope, would be, that even if I can influence one person, and that's why I always tell people, whether I do national media, international media, a podcast, or if I talk to one person in my office who I mentor, I give the same level of effort in every single circumstance, because you don't know what impact that can have on anybody. So that's what I would hope would be my legacy.
I know you do, my friend, and I greatly appreciate your time. It's been a real honor. Thank you very much for coming
My
in.
pleasure.